We're back on the SportsZone. I am Mike Aglialoro. So, day 2 of the NFL draft is over. 12 trades between the second and third rounds of the NFL draft. And seeing as how we're 2 days in, we're going to look at the early winners and losers of the NFL draft so far. The teams that I really think have done well, we're going to start with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, the pick of Blake Bortles at the number 3 position was kind of baffling to most people. But like I said in my last piece, to quote John Gruden, it's all in the eye of the beholder at the position. But they went with Blake Bortles, and they stuck with him. And then on day 2, they gave him some weapons to work with there. And they got Marcus Lee, the wide receiver, who was rated number 3 on Jake Dixon's top 10 wide receiving list. And then they traded up with the San Francisco 49ers. They traded their 3rd round pick and their 5th round pick for the number 61 overall pick in the 2nd round, bottom of the 2nd round, to take Allen Robinson, the wide receiver out of Penn State. Now, he's thought to be a little bit of a project, but one way or another, you just added 2 guys who can grow with Blake Bortles at that position. You don't have to rush them right now. You have 3 guys in Cecil Shorts, Mike Brown, and Ace Sanders who are not great wide receivers, but they are solid veteran presence who you can put in there while these 2 guys learn the position. So I think that's going to help them out. Then with they traded back into the 3rd round with the New England Patriots for the number 93 pick, where they picked up a guard, Brandon Linder, from the University of Miami, to protect Blake Bortles. So I think they did a great job on offense. You know what they've done on the defensive side with Gus Bradley bringing in some guys from Seattle. So that unit's been improved. Now they address the offense. I look for them to add another running back to go with Toby Gerhart in day 3. We're going to go to Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay picked up another big wide receiver in Mike Evans to go next to Vinny Jackson. And then on day 2, they added another one in, this time, a tight end, Austin Seferian Jenkins from University of North Carolina to go with that. So, I mean, you just added 2 big weapons to go with either Josh McCown or Mike Glennon at quarterback. And if it is Mike Glennon, who they threw their confidence behind and called him the quarterback of the future earlier this week, he just got 2 nice shiny toys to play with next to Vinny Jackson. So you gotta like what Tampa Bay is doing thus far. And they added another running back for depth purposes with Doug Martin coming back off of his season-ending surgery that he went down first half of the season. They wanted some depth. They added Charles Sims, the running back from West Virginia University. Moving on, I can't say I love the draft because it's still the Philadelphia Eagles, but I am going to give credit where credit's due here. After baffling some people, reaching for Marcus Smith, the defensive end from Louisville, they did what they had to do in day 2. They filled the void left by Deshaun Jackson when they cut him. First, they acquired Jordan Matthews, the wide receiver, who many people thought they were going to take in the 1st round. They got him in the 2nd round. And then they added one of Chip Kelly's former players from the University of Oregon, Josh Huff, at wide receiver. So Huff's a little bit of a project, but between the 2 of them, they took care of the big glaring hole on that offense when Deshaun Jackson was cut. So they took care of that. Got to put them on the winners list. And I got to put Washington on this list for really pulling the pants over the Dallas Cowboys' face and just completely rubbing it in it. They traded their 1st pick in the draft, which was the 2nd pick in the 2nd round, to the Dallas Cowboys. And not only did the Cowboys give them their 2nd round pick, they gave them their 3rd round pick too. And they picked Trent Murphy, the outside linebacker, defensive end. With the 1st pick, they picked Spencer Long, the guard, with the 3rd round pick. And they got Moses Morgan, the offensive tackle, who we all thought was going in the 1st round. They got him with their 3rd round pick. So that's a win, unfortunately, as much as it kills me to say it. And the last team whose draft I really like what the Jets have done so far. Yesterday they got the safety in Calvin Pryor, and today they didn't get a wide receiver, but they did add a tight end which they really haven't had since Dustin Keller was doing good. And they got one of the best ones available in Jason Morrow, someone who was supposed to go higher in the second round, actually. It was thought that the Giants may make a play for him, and he slipped to the Jets. And then with their third round pick, they addressed the cornerback situation. They got Dex McDougal from Maryland. He may not have been a highly touted one, but he's still someone there who can push a guy like Dean Milner so you get the most out of him. So I like what they're doing with their draft so far. Now it's on to the guys whose drafts I really don't get. I'm not really going to call four of these teams losers. I am going to call the Dallas Cowboys a loser in this one because you trade your second and third round draft pick for a guy who was thought to go towards the end of the second, early third in DeMarcus Lawrence. You outside linebacker, defensive end. You want to replace DeMarcus Ware, that's fine. But the Washington Redskins, who you traded 14 picks down to, got an outside linebacker in Trent Murphy. So I don't understand what the hell you did that for. And it's just like the Travis Fredericks trade from last year. Whether or not the guy turns out good is irrelevant because A, you might have been able to get him at the pick you had, and B, you gave up entirely too much for him. So that's the only major loser in this draft as far as I am concerned. The other teams, I just really don't get what they're doing. Cleveland didn't address the wide receiver position when it was thought that they needed just a complement for Josh Gordon. Earlier on Friday, it was announced that Josh Gordon could be suspended and miss the entire 2014 NFL season. And then Nate Burleson, it was announced he broke his hand, the same hand he broke last year in his car accident. So, and they did not address wide receiver at all. They had a pretty decent draft in terms of filling holes, getting a guy in Joe Bitonio who can actually play all around the offensive line. They got an outside linebacker in Chris Kirksey, and they picked up a receiving running back in Terrence West from Towson University. Well, I know Mel Kiper was all over this guy. He loved this guy. But they didn't address the wide receiver position. Right now, it is the weakest wide receiving core in the NFL. They did nothing. So if they don't bring in 3 wide receivers on day 3, it's still a waste. Even though we've heard this is a deep wide receiving draft, they did nothing to address wide receiver. In Houston, got Jadeveon Clowney yesterday. We didn't really talk about that. But they've done nothing to address their quarterback situation. They have Ryan Fitzpatrick and Case Keenum going. They picked up an offensive guard, Xavier Suave-Filio, and I know I'm not pronouncing that right. CJ Fedorich, the tight end. And then they got the defensive tackle. They traded up to get Lewis Nix III, the defensive tackle, who was supposed to go in the first round, actually. So they've actually had a really good draft outside of the fact that they don't have a quarterback to start the season. Carolina Panthers don't have a wide receiving core outside of 3 mediocre veterans. They picked up Kelvin Benjamin, the 6'5" wide receiver in the first round, who's thought to be a project, and they did nothing else outside of that on day 2. They brought in Coney Ailey, the defensive end, and Trey Turner, the guard from LSU. Again, these are decent picks, but it's not addressing the major area of need here. And Arizona, I don't get because, they've made some decent picks here. They got Deion Buchanan, the safety, Troy Nichols, tight end from Notre Dame, Kareem Martin, defensive end from North Carolina, another wide receiver, Josh Brown. But you still don't really have an offensive line to protect Carson Palmer. You brought in Jared Velt here, and you're getting Jonathan Cooper back, your first-round draft pick from last season. You still need more against the toughest division in football. And the St. Louis Rams, supposedly the worst team in the division, they just beefed up their offensive line by adding Aaron Donald to go with Michael Brockers, Robert Quinn, Chris Long, and James Laurinaitis at linebacker. And you do nothing to address that. So that's my problem with Arizona's draft. That's my winners and losers for day 2. We're going to be back at the end of the draft to kind of wrap it up. And I know Jake Dixon has his wrap-up planned of each team, how they did, winners and losers. So we're going to have that. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at WeAreSportsZone. As always, send us any questions and comments you may have. Thanks for watching, folks. For This is SportsZone, I am Mike Aglialoro. We will see you next time, folks.